Hey there, welcome. So today we're looking at weapon sway again, and the last time I showed you the final setup, but today we're going to be looking at a complete alternate setup, which was my original setup. But I think if you watched my last video, I was describing how this one needed needed to have a little bit too many concessions on um, all the little different states that you can do in the game. So I still think it looks good. Um, but I just had to, excuse me, I had to do a little too much. And there's just something about how it was running around and working in all these little different states and um, strafing and all that sort of stuff. It just didn't feel right um, for how much I had to do. So I think with even with gliding, like I even like moved the weapon position while I was gliding and all that. And again, I just wanted a simpler setup, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff in here. So I'll take you through it so you can see what's going on. So this is our control rig here. From the previous video, this is our final setup right here. So if you watch the previous video, that's that. And here you can see that we are doing a get transform bone, rig hierarchy. Looks like I'm just working with the bone and not the controller on this one. So bone to bone, getting the transform and setting the transform. And then we're breaking out just the translation. And then we're doing some modification on the translation. So it looks like I set up a spring interp, excuse me, function. And if we come into here, we can see how we are doing a right left offset. So when the character moves left or moves right, a forward and back offset. So when the character moves forward or backward, and an up down offset. So when you're jumping and then you have a falling is the easier way to say that. And then that all pumps into the spring interp. And then we're setting the strength and dampening values depending on what's happening. So let's go into the strength and dampening values first. Okay, so based off the speed, so if you're just stationary, we've got a strength value of 2. But if you're sprinting, because that's my sprint speed, then we have a target value of 4. So the speed variable here, I'm getting from the ABP. It's somewhere in here, anim graph. Nope, not that one actually. Not the slope, the weapon sway. Here it is. So here's the speed. So just getting the speed value. I'm sure you guys know how to calculate that, but should be pretty straightforward. Thinking we're just getting the character's velocity, speed, set, and then getting the vector length of that set speed here. So yeah, we're getting the character's velocity, we're getting the vector length, and that's going to be the speed. So that pumps out all 3 values, x, y, and z. So left, right, forward and backward, and up and down. And since I wanted the weapon to offset while we're moving up and down, I chose to use the speed value rather than just the speed XY value here, which would be ground speed. Because it's just X and Y and not Z. Okay. So, and then on the damp value, same thing. If we're stationary, it's a 0.5. And if we're sprinting, and then we tighten it up at 1. So basically, if we're sprinting, I think we're going back to the default values. Okay, so that's our strength and dampening function there. Um, so now if we go to right left offset, so we're taking our X here, our X translation, and then we're adding it to whatever it is that we're doing. So first we're saying, so if we go back here and we have a strafing alpha here. So let's see here. So yeah, we're using our strafing alpha. Any more alphas? Yeah, gliding alpha. Okay, so I'll go ahead and show how these alphas are set up. So we go find the reference. So we're setting our state alphas here. So we're setting a lot of alphas here. We go back real quick. I used to use the weapon sway alpha. Um, and that would basically, depending on what's going on with the character, like what state we're in, we're basically turning off and on that alpha value. So we're ramping up to zero. I mean, sorry, up to one or down to zero. So I made a function here, which is just an f interp. So we just go in there. So you can see this set alpha from bool. I'm using that in multiple places. And basically the way that set alpha from bool works is that um, we get the bool here. We pipe that in. And then we have the set alpha, we're getting it, and then we're setting it here. And we are saying if it's false, what do we want the number to be? And if it's true, what do we want the number to be? So if strafing is true, we want our alpha to be 1. And if strafing is false, we want our alpha to be 0. And then how fast we want that to interp. So you can see here, we're doing that again for just the weapon sway alpha in general. Looks like we're doing another, or is gliding. I guess I just piped that one out instead of doing gliding over here for some reason. Then we have a movement input alpha that's using that bool too. And some other things, like we might cover this in another video. I think this might be for, I think that might be for my slope warping that I haven't recorded that one yet. And then strafing on the arms, that's for slope warping as well. Okay. So if we go into this bool, we can see how it's set up. So again, we are inputting we're getting our alpha variable that we want to set, and then we're setting it here. And our get alpha will be our current value. And I think I've explained this before, but an f interp. So the current value goes in, the target value goes in, and then we set the current value to the new target value, and then that's what gets pumped out. This becomes the current value, and then we just cycle and repeat because this target value is probably always updating based off player input or the interp speed over delta time and about where we're going. So basically, we're getting our current value. Again, it's just like a wheel, essentially. We get our current value, we set it to our new target value here, and then that target value becomes the current value, and then we rinse and repeat. So it's just like this wheel. Okay, so then we've got the number we want to be for true, the number we want to be for false, and we're just selecting that number based off what the bool is actually doing. And we've got just a delta time variable that we're piping in. We've got our interp speed that we're bringing in over here from our input function. And then our f interp is complete. So we set those values out here. So again, this function is handy because I do this pretty often. In fact, you can see we can set alphas from bools now anytime you want. We aren't using this weapon sway alpha, but I'll run you through it. Actually, I think for this setup, we do need to use the weapon sway alpha. So I'll go ahead and pump uh, um, on the control rig. I will go ahead and gosh, the words are fading me. I will connect that. There we go. Alrighty. So on the weapon sway alpha, we are getting our state. So we know what our function looks like here. We're getting our alpha and then we're setting our alpha. And what bools run this alpha? So let's see. If any of these are true, then we'll be true here. And if any of them are false, then obviously we'll be false here. So what are the bools? Okay, so first bool, so a bunch of ors. So are we flying and sprinting? So that means we're moving really fast. So let's see here. So now we're flying and now we're flying and sprinting. So basically, are we doing this? We can see how, I don't know if you noticed, but like we're piping this down to zero, this alpha. Think I can go back here to the anim graph and we can watch this alpha. Watch here. So we're at 1 here. So we know the control rig is being used. And then if we fly and sprint, and if we watch this character, that would be nice too. All right, flying and sprinting, we can see how that alpha is going down to 0. So that's our first bool. Okay, our second bool is just, are we dashing? So if we're rolling or dashing, I'm sorry, that is sliding. And I have the strafe to dash. So if we're dashing, then basically we're ramping the that weapon sway alpha down to 0. If we're falling and sprinting, so that's basically if we're in gliding and we hit shift and go down, we're still gliding. So that's what that is. And then just regular old sprinting. So all of those and one more. If there's an animation curve that's greater than 0. So all of these will make that true. So if we're true, then we're, unless we have this anim curve, which I don't think I'm using on anything right now. So I just set it up to where if this anim curve is greater than 0, then we're going to drive the alpha by what we want on that specific animation via another animation curve. So basically, I would set this animation curve to 1. The reason why it's 0 is that if this anim curve doesn't exist, specifically, like you haven't put that anim curve on an animation sequence, then it is always assumed that this animation curve is a value of 0. So if we're greater than 0, so that would be like setting it to a value of 1, then this becomes true. And then we check here. So we've got this little select here. And the select is basically this bool that says, are we greater than 0 on that animation curve again? That's true. If that's true, then we're going to use this weapon sway alpha. And that's another animation curve. So again, here you can say, yes, I want to disable weapon sway, but then that naming is kind of weird. Maybe it should be like enable weapon sway or something. But like I said, I don't think I'm using this name change enable weapon sway. Okay, so if we enable the weapon sway, this becomes true. We come down here, we check this, and then we say this animation curve is now driving it. So like whatever value you want your animation curve to be at that point. So on that particular state, say if you wanted, say swimming to be a value of 0.25, you can on all your swimming animations, you can say 0.25 or something like that. Or a particular swimming animation, like you're like it's a strong freestyle swim or something. Otherwise, we're setting this to 0. And looks like we're setting it to 0 if we're pivoting but not gliding. Okay. Uh, so this is one of the reasons why I abandoned this setup because there's a lot of like little rules based off every little state. But I wanted to run you through it. So here we go. Still. So if we are pivoting, we are essentially saying that that the interp speed is going to change. So if you're not pivoting, um, so I can show this practice. So if we are pivoting, gives like a little. I think it just. It's been a while since I looked at this, so you'll have to forgive me. Um, I think it ramps. Make sure to ramp up to that speed, whatever speed we need it to be. So let's look at the. Let's go back. Oops. Let's go back here and let's watch this number and see what's happening with our. So yeah, when we're pivoting, we're just ramping that value down to 0. Pivoting and not gliding. That's right. So basically, we're on the ground and we're pivoting. So every time we pivot, we shoot that number down to 0 real quick. So I give it a larger interp speed. And I think I did that because, so if we go back here, so if we just drop this value to 4, I think it was just like overshooting. The weapon was just overshooting too much from side to side. So let's pivot. I guess there was just some bounciness that I didn't like there. Yeah, it's that when we're pivoting from moving right and then pivot left, there's like this little bounce up. Um, so anyway, that clamps that a little bit harder since we're ramping that value down to 0. Nope. Nope, still does it. I'm not sure. But anyway, you can see it's even confusing to me because like I didn't write comments. Um, okay. And then there's all this aim offset stuff. So if none of those are true, then we're in false. So for false, we're at 1. We want um, essentially this weapon sway value to be 0. Um, so if we're not strafing, so you can see here, if we're not strafing, we're just 1. But if we are strafing, then there's something about like aim offset that like put that weapon in a weird spot. So I think I'm saying if we're looking to the left, let's watch this. So you can watch this value change. So as we look more and more 90 degrees left or right, this value drops. Our alpha value moves towards 0. Because there was just something about how that weapon was hitting the character's head or something like that, or like the arms were clipping through. And I just didn't like it. But if we just put a value of 1 even for strafing, we can see, let's zoom in a little bit. So like when I look too far this way, like it gets in this weird position. So it was just wonky. All right, let's hook that back up and then play again. Let's see the difference one more time while we look down. Yeah, can't say I really fixed it with that. I think this is one of the reasons why I just abandoned this setup. Um, it was a nice exercise, and I think that's basically all this is at this point. Okay, so we have our other alphas. So what else are we piping into here? Um, the move, input 2D, strafe, and glide. And then this one, this is for the next video. That setup we won't be talking about today. Okay, so back to our control rig. So you can see that's where we're using our strafe alpha. So we're just remapping those ranges. So if we're strafing, we're at 0 here. If the strafe alpha is 0, meaning that we are not strafing, then this value will be 0. So that's the last thing that we check in here. Or I should say the first thing that we check. So we are saying, are you, let's watch this value, play. Are you strafing? Then we are strafing. But if we're not strafing, then we're just not getting any of that information here. So we're not doing anything to our left and right, specifically in this function here, without when we're not strafing. So then we are strafing here. And then we're saying, I wonder why this gliding is down here. Because if, can I glide and strafe? I don't even remember. So no, you can't glide and strafe. So strafing is always 0. So this doesn't mean anything down here. Because if I'm gliding, I can't strafe anyway. So this is always 0. So if our source is 0, then our target is 0. And that's what it spits out, 0. So this doesn't work here. So this would need to be over here. We'd have to check first, are we gliding? We do an add here. That way they're just two independent things. There we are. So let's save this. So basically what we're doing here is we're checking, are we gliding? If so, do some addition here. And that's independent from are we strafing? So that should work. Oops. Let's clean this up a little bit. There we are. So we'll call this gliding check. And this one, we'll call this strafe check. There. Alrighty. So if we're gliding, then we're just moving this weapon to these offsets here on our X value for translation. So let's play. So let's go up. What is this value here? What's this value? It should be 0. I think we need an interp. Say if we're gliding, that should do it. Okay, let's save that. So if we're gliding, then we'll be down here. Then we'll get these offsets. There we are. All right, so now we don't have that offset here. We go up, and now we're gliding. So now we're just offset all the time with those numbers here. So gliding alpha, this doesn't matter. This should just be probably just a 15 here, like that. Because if we're gliding here, and that's true, then this is obviously only a 1. So we would only get a 15 there. Okay, so if we're not gliding, we're not doing anything. And then if we're strafing, I guess this could be an interp here too. So let's do that. I think that's a little bit more straightforward. Yeah, so let's bring this here. This one's here. And then this one's here. Then we can get rid of this remap. Okay, so if we're strafing, we're doing this. If we're not strafing, we're doing nothing. Same thing with gliding. Okay, that is, I think, a little bit more straightforward setup. So let's save that. Okay, so if we are gliding, then we're getting our get move x value, which is from our move x and move y float here. So I believe we get that from our ABP. We get that from our move input. I think I showed this in our previous video. I think it was the second video in the series. Basically, we're getting, every time there's a move input, there's a axis value that gets updated. And then we're printing those axis values out. So left and right would be our x value. So if we're moving right, then we're a value of 1. If we're moving left, we're a value of -1. Same thing if we're moving forward, that's our y. If we're moving forward, it's a value of 1. And if we're moving backwards, it's a value of -1. I'm pressing both at the same time. 1 minus 1 is 0. So it would be a value of 0. Same thing for our x, our left and right there. So our top one is x, and our bottom one is y. And that's a vector 2D variable there. Okay, so we're just saying if you're moving left, which is -1, then you'll have one value. If you're moving right, you'll have a value of 0. And if you're moving left, I'm sorry, left is -1. If you're moving right, which is a value of 1, then you'll have a value of 30. So we're offsetting our x transform by 30. So the other thing is, I'm trying to find details. Oh, we have our move x curve here. So that's a variable. We look at this variable over here. It's just this curve value. So we're -1 here. So as we move left, we say we're 0 here. There's 0. So if we're moving left, we'll come here and do this. This animation will play like that. And it'll move our x value to our -1 value, which is a 0. So go to 0 and overshoot and then come back to 0. And then we'll go up to 30 because that's what this value is here. So when we move right, we'll go to 30 here, overshoot a little bit, and then come back to 30 when we're moving right. Because our value of 1 on our move x is a 1. So if we watch that value here, no watch value. Okay, so I can't watch it from here, but I can. We go to our forward solve. If we just print here our move x, get our move x, there we are. If we print that, you see we're not moving. So you can see here where a value of 0, -1, and 1, -1, and 1. So now we're moving forward. It's easier if we're strafing so we can understand that. So 1, -1, 1. So we're offsetting our x by 30 here, and then we're offsetting our x by 0 here. Okay, so let's go back in. So I believe that's the end of our move x function. So now we're looking at when we move forward and backward. So that's our y offset. So our y translation comes in from our function, it hits our new function, and then we spit out a value here into our spring interp. Okay, so this one's a little bit more complicated. I'm glad I'm already using interps here. So if we're gliding, we are moving our weapon on the y-axis a -25. And if we're not gliding, then we're moving at 0. And then we're going to add here some right-left inputs. So if we're moving forward, let me get rid of this. I'll just leave that. Okay, so, yes, I think I figured this out at some point on when I was setting this up, that if you're strafing, you can't glide. Okay, so I think here we'll do the same thing. We'll do interp, so we'll just grab this one. And interp here, this comes here, this guy comes here, and then that's all set up. So if we're strafing, then and moving forward, left, and forward, right. So that's basically what this is for. So we're getting our X move, and like no matter what, we're moving looks like we're using our same curve from before. So if we're moving forward, so first it's that we're strafing. There. So now we do a Y offset when we're moving left and right. And it's just -45. So if we look down, I think I might, guess because it's like -45 on everything, it probably just takes that. So if I say 0 here, so there's no offset when we're strafing. And if we say -45 here, okay. Then the curve. So that could be 0, but it looks like it's moving. So it looks like we're spitting out. So if I watch this value here, can I watch it? No watch result. So this is Y. Y result. Let's see if we can print out this y result. Let's pipe this into here and call this a print. Then we have our print here. There we are. Yeah, it's sitting at negative 45 all the time. Then we go to strafe, it's at negative 25. Strafing and not strafing. So I think what I wanted to accomplish there was that let me do an interp here. So if this is 0, let's say the absolute value, because this could be 1 or negative 1. And then we'll interp that here. And then we'll get our 45 here. So negative 45. So I only want to add this negative 45 if we're strafing and moving left and right. Okay, I think that was the intention. So I'll leave it with that intention. So that's the setup there. So are we strafing? Yes or no? If no, then we're 0. If yes, then we're asking, do we actually have X or Y, I'm sorry, uh, right or left input? And it doesn't matter which, we're just, because we're applying the same value. If that's true, then we'll apply our negative 45 there. If not, then we'll apply 0. Okay. So then we're looking at, so we're adding again to our Y value. I don't think we should be adding our, I'm just looking at this. I don't think we should be adding all of these to Y to Y to Y. So it's Y plus this, and then it's the original Y plus that. And then the sum of that can get more and more. So I think that one needs to be updated here, because I think my intention is, I'm a little confused, but want to say that this is nowhere. This is an interp here. Based on the absolute value of this one. So this is our move Y. So again, moving forward is 1, moving backward is negative 1. So that's here. So then we say add. So we're adding 3 things here. So that's this one, and this one. Okay. So we're going to move this all the way over here. We're saying gliding. We're saying strafing. Then we're saying just moving. And then that's added to here. And then that's over here. Okay, so that should be our setup here. This might be why it's always a little bbit confusing, like how you want to bring these things in. So we're strafing, not strafing. So we're moving forward and backward. Okay, I think that's feeling pretty good. So yeah, we got that negative 45 there. I think that's a bit much. So not negative 45, maybe negative, let's half it, 22.5. Doesn't go as far, so that's better. How about 12 point something, something? I think it's 11.25. So it's just not as far. So again, like this is definitely way more complicated than just doing a few spring interps for rotation and translation. Um, and I didn't think it was, significantly better. It was just way more cumbersome. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to show you all of that. So let's go here. Okay, so here's the setup. So are we gliding? Yes or no? We're adding that into our Y. Are we moving left and right while strafing? Yes or no? We're adding that into our Y. And then finally, are we moving forward or backward? Whoops. Yes or no? If yes, if no, then we're 0. Pretty straightforward. If yes, then we're this value here. And we have this animation curve. We're going from 0 to 1. So I don't have a -1 here. So 0 to 1. So -1 would be backwards. So basically, we're not offsetting this while we're moving backward. Um, I think that's fine. So then we're saying we've got another strafe check. If we're strafing, if strafing is 0, actually, is if this strafe alpha is 0, then we're getting these values here based off a speed check. And if we're gliding, then we're doing a gliding check. So another gliding check if we're moving forward and backwards. Okay, so for a value of 0 or value of 1, that means that we're pressing the forward button while we're gliding. So let's check that one out. So then we're going to move negative 25 units on our Y. Whoops, whoops, there we are. Let's go up. And then we'll glide. And then we'll move forward. And we can see how that weapon moves negative 25. If we move backward, it moves even more. I wonder why I have it moving more. Hmm. Well, there you go. So it'll play this little animation where we move from 0 to 1. So it'll overshoot and then come back to 1. So it'll go a little further than these values here when we're gliding. Um, oh, okay, I see. It's the same value, so it's negative 25. So if we're not gliding, since it's here, then we're just a negative 50 here. So again, I think, it might be simpler. Oh, I think it's okay. Remap or interpolate, I think, in this case would do the same thing. So we're basically just saying, are we gliding? If no, then we'll add negative 50. If we're gliding, then yes, then we'll half that to negative 25. We're moving forward. So our minimum value is 0. So say we're not moving at all. So that's here. So then we are moving. Then we move the weapon back, which is here, our negative 50. So Oh, okay. So for 0, then a -1 still will get a value here. So we're basically saying, what speed am I while I'm at 0? I'm at -10. So if we make this that smaller, I can do this. So we're going to say -20. Okay, we're checking strafe and we're not strafing. Okay, so let's say -100. That's not doing anything. We're at a minimum value here, -100. Let's move. Yeah, this won't do anything here. Because if we're at 0, that means that we're not moving forward or backward at all anyway. So that should be this value. We're at 0, 0 here, 0 here for strafing, and that gets us to here. And then 0 here for speed. That should get us to here, our minimum value. It's interesting. Oh, okay. This is blocking it here. So if our y is at 0, we're not doing anything anyway. Yeah, this will never be hit here for the speed check. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. So is hit at some point. So like I keep saying, this is a tricky setup. So -10. Was it just for this one particular moment where this weapon wouldn't like fly off? How interesting. So that speed check is essentially a pivot where we're ramping down to 0 while we're moving forward or backward. Ah, speed forward, backward, pivoting. Speed drops to close to 0. Ah, interesting. Okay. So if there's this one, this one. So we got speed. Our value is 0. Ah, okay, there we are. How funny. So when we're moving towards the camera, essentially pressing the back button, but still moving forward because we're not strafing, then so yeah, that's this one here. So that would be, that's the minimum value. Minimum value here. Whoops. Minimum value forward back pivoting max value. Non strafing holding back key running toward camera. There. So that was -50. So we're here. How funny. So that's the minimum value. Again, minimum is 0. We come here, we check to see if we're strafing or not. If no, then we come here and we check what our speed is. And then if our speed is at 730, then we're doing our -50 there. Okay. Well, I hate to say it, but this setup sucks. there's there's way too many notes. Okay, last one. So let's check our up and down. Okay. So same thing. Looks like we are doing a spring interp here for our up and down. So we're bringing in our Z translation and we're adding our gliding, up and drag while gliding. So if we're gliding here, I don't know if I need extra spring interp on top of the spring interp, but this is just for our Z value. And there's a offset time. Whoops. So it gives it like a little bit of extra bounciness, I guess. Okay. So we add our Z to this spring interp, and then our value over time, which is kind of like an offset motion. So like overlapping action in animation, or like a drag or follow through. It basically takes what's happened and offsets it a little bit so that that happens later on the next object. Okay. So then we have our spring interp, 0.25, or 2.5 and 0.25. We have our value over time. And you could just mess around with that, but our value is this. Huh. It's actually our side to side move, left and right. Oh, that might be why. So if we're sprint, let's disconnect this and play. Because there was that little bounce on the pivoting where our weapon moved up and down. Are we gonna play? There it is. So we pivot. Yeah, it doesn't have that bounce anymore. Okay. So we're getting our left right input here. And we're just basically linear curve going from -1 to 1. So if we're at -1, that means we're moving left. Then we're checking our speed here. If we're at a speed of 0, then we're doing no offset. But if we're at a speed of 730, then we're doing a -15 offset on the Z. So we're bringing that weapon down a little bit more. Let's compile. So that's right. That's left. And yeah, it does have that little bit of bounciness there. So if we did -15 here, so that's why I needed that speed check, because like that weapon's just in the torso now. So we can only do the -15 on the left if we're moving left, or whatever value we wanted to put there. Okay. All right. So that's Z. It's pretty straightforward. gliding, we're doing an offset for Z. Let's check that real quick. Let's go up and glide. So offset of 500. So yeah, we're basically pushing the weapon away from the body there. Okay. Okay. So while we're gliding, we're moving the weapon away from the body. Move weapon away body. And then here, it's just a slight offset while we're moving left and right. And then we're only doing that here. Oh, I wonder if this this spring and value over time might be useful there on everything. Nope. No. Okay. Order of operations matters sometimes. Okay. So it's a pretty simple curve. Getting our move left and right. -1, 1. If we're at -1, we're checking our speed. And if we're not moving, then we're at 0. If we are moving, then we're at our -15, which is the same as our right will have without a speed check. Okay. I think that's it. And let's get rid of this print. So yeah, we've looked at our left right offset for X, our forward and back offset for Y, and then our up and down offset for Z. And then we've done our strength and dampening. Oh, and going back through that setup, I mean, I like the idea of it. Um, but I don't know, it's just way too complicated and ugh. Ugh. That's what I think about that setup. So that's why I went with this other setup that was talked about in our previous video. So even watch the previous video, please, by all means, go and watch that. I go through this entire setup and I even build a little bit of it from scratch. Okay, so next time I didn't complete this setup, but next video we'll talk about this setup. So happy animating out there. Hopefully that wasn't as confusing for you to follow as was for me to remember and understand what I was doing, but I bet it was. Um, but hey, maybe you learned a thing or two. All right, see ya. Happy animating out there. Enjoy the journey.